Everybody was fine, other than the deer. Back in 2013, when we set out to set the New York to LA Cannonball record, I didn't expect we would do it on the first try. It was really just kind of an exploratory shakedown run for the car. The team had come together at the last minute and we just kind of started to go fast and went faster and kept going fast, and all the things that could have slowed us down never did. But I kind of wasn't done with the exploratory process of driving across the country. And so I kind of always wanted to do more of a relaxed run, go slower, experience it a little bit more, and really see the country in a different way. But in 2015, when we did the 2904 in the $1,500 S-Class, yeah, we ended up driving a lot faster than I expected to, because everybody was a lot more competitive and I still wanted to win. So we did that. Then back in 2016, I did the C2C with Forrest and Harney, and we again went faster than I thought because we kept breaking down and being stuck on the side of the road. But nothing just really gave me that just relaxing jaunt across the country that I'd been looking for. And so when the 10th anniversary, it was going to be the final running of the 2904 was announced, I was like, this is it. This is what I've got to do. And we'd all been looking for these 85 Audi 4000S Quattro Brock Yates edition sedans, and I found one. And it was awesome because it was the most correct car to take on something like this, but it only had 115 horsepower. So I can't go fast, I can't be competitive, who cares? I'm just out to drive across the country. But unfortunately, even with a competent mechanic who was very confident in his ability to get the CIS working, it didn't work out. And the car started to lose compression and just needed a lot more time, and I'm still not exactly sure what I'm going to do with it. So a week prior to departure, I ended up buying a 1995 Cadillac Fleetwood Brougham limousine from a guy up in North Georgia off Craigslist. And it was not in good shape, and I paid probably a little more for it than I should have, but I needed it, and it was going to be at least very comfortable because we'd have a navigator, a driver, and then 2 bench seats in the back to be comfortable, stretch out, and have blankets and pillows. It sounded wonderful. And unfortunately, John Ficarra, the organizer of the 2904, he had a Saab that broke down about the same time. And so he was not going to be able to take that car. So he and his co-drivers needed a place to go. So I said, hey, why don't you all fly down here and we'll take the limo. So I started the process of getting it all sort of rehabilitated, and magically I even got it to pass emissions and got a valid plate for it. So I wasn't going to be driving on an expired or temporary tag or anything. So this was going to be great. It seemed like things were coming together, and probably spent about $3,000 that last weekend, kind of bringing it up to at least something we could have some level of confidence in. Of course, there were a couple of things we weren't able to source. We needed an idler pulley that I guess was out of production. And the clutch for the compressor was not good on the air conditioning. We couldn't find one of those. So again, we were going to be without AC. But I was starting to notice that the fuel gauge was a little bit intermittently wrong. And it ended up running out of gas at one point as I was running it around Atlanta. So I kind of learned about how we needed to approximate its fuel economy. Ficarra flew in, and I picked him up at the airport a couple of days prior to departure, and we continued to kind of button up some loose ends and pack. And then we drove up to New York, and his 2 co-drivers were New York based. It was Alex Richter, who had driven several 2904s with him, and John Harrison, who was a veteran of the 1979 Cannonball, the final running. He'd run a Lotus Esprit, and unfortunately he'd run out of gas in Ohio, and it ended up actually sliding out and hitting a guardrail in Indiana. So he never finished the Cannonball, and had always kind of been a chip on his shoulder, and he'd sort of been the grand marshal for most of the runnings of the 2904. So I was really, really excited to have him along. And as this was going to be kind of a big car, big, comfy, relaxing time, we didn't do a fuel cell or anything like that. We just packed enough stuff and a lot of food and drinks and decided we were going to have a good time. And this was going to be the largest field ever run across the country since 1979. In fact, I think we were going to have 14 cars, some with the C2C class, which was just pre-1980 and under $3,000, and some that abided by the whole 2904 rule set. So we all met in New York City, and on the way up, unfortunately, we got sidelined a little bit because our starter went out. But fortunately, we were in Virginia, not too far from another participating team, and they were able to make the AutoZone run and bring one over to us. So that was awesome, and we got it all handled. And we made it to New York City, and the pre-party, the launch party for the event, was going to be held by Alex Roy at his condo. The kind of fraternity of lunatics that care about this sort of thing, the Cannonballers, is kind of a tight-knit group, and it's really not that big, so it's always nice to catch up with everybody. And we did the competitions to see who got to start when, and we were going to leave the next day at noon. There were a few things we needed to button up the next morning. The tires were not well in balance, and we had noticed that it was massively overfilled on oil and transmission fluid. So we ended up going over to Ben Preston's shop to kind of fix that all in Red Hook, and it was always great to see him and to look forward to seeing what the Omega was capable of on another run across the country. country. But as we were at the party, another participant sort of brought up jokingly, wouldn't it be funny if somebody showed up here with like an expired registration or even an expired driver's license? And it occurred to me that my birthday had been the week prior. And I had remembered the last time I'd bothered to actually look at my driver's license closely that the expiration was coming up fairly soon. So I pulled out my wallet and looked, and sure enough, my driver's license was a week expired. So I was about to race across the country in an old Cadillac limousine with an expired license. You know, what's the worst that could happen? But the next day comes, we get the car all ready and packed up, and John Harrison was going to take the first leg, and we were excited to see that. It just made all the sense in the world, and we couldn't have been any happier to have him along. So he drove the first 150 miles or so, and he actually didn't really like the Pennsylvania Turnpike, so we went a little bit further south to stay on 95 longer, but who cares? We went about 40 miles longer than we had to, but it was great to just see him at the wheel, and I took over for the second stint. And we were cruising through Pennsylvania, and John pulls out his camera phone and wants to send a picture of the group of our nav screen to kind of show a status. And I was a little bit disappointed with how fast we were going at that time, so I went ahead and floored it. And we were trying to get up as close to what we'd learned was the top speed of the limo, which was about 108 miles an hour. It would indicate 112, that's I guess where the governor was kicking in, and it would do 108, maybe 109 downhill. So as I'm accelerating, the car starts to stutter a bit. And we'd gotten about 16 or 17 miles per gallon on the way up, so we kind of figured it should be about that. But at the speeds we were going, we were actually pushing it a little bit harder, and it looked like it was getting about 12. So we ran out of gas. But fortunately, there was a team from MIT not far behind us, and they agreed to grab a gas can and bring it in. We had bought a gas can, we just forgot to fill it up. So they brought us the one about 30 or 40 minutes later, and we got to, again, relax on the side of the road and see how everybody else was doing. But we get back on the road, and in fact, we would run out of gas 2 more times, because the car would go exactly 273.4 miles before running out of gas. Fortunately, the next 2 times, each at the end of a leg that I was driving, we would just be still kind of sputtering and occasionally accelerating enough to get off the exit ramp and actually roll up to the pump. So we never even had to push the thing. We did befall a bit of calamity. Actually, the whole field sort of did. Unfortunately, Doug Tabbitt's Monte Carlo broke down. It lost a transmission not too far from his home in Ohio, as well as Martin, who you'll recognize from the Maserati video, happened to run into a deer in his Lincoln. And everybody was fine other than the deer, but the Lincoln was totaled and obviously the Monte Carlo was sidelined. So both teams, in fact, independently ended up renting Hyundai Elantras. And fortunately, both of them finished. But not long after we passed Martin's team on the side of the road with the Lincoln covered in deer, I came into contact with a police officer and I was going a bit too quickly in the limousine. So he pulled us over and I had to present him with the registration for the car and my expired license, which he didn't notice immediately, but as he took it back to his cruiser, he did. So he came back and he had caught me at 92 and a 70, but he came back saying, look, I'm gonna give you the biggest hookup ever for today. I'm not going to impound the car for the expired license, and I'm not even gonna ticket you for that, and I'll even knock it down to 89, but y'all slow it down and keep it going. I said, well, thank you so much. You know, while you're at it, would you mind making it 84? Because that would be a different ticket category in my home state, which does have reciprocity with you guys in Illinois. But he laughed and said, no, that's enough generosity for today. So we got back on the road. That didn't sideline us for too long, and we continued along. But it was just so cool to see the difference of terrain and the difference going along 80. We went through the high plains, and that just sucked all the power out of the cars with the elevation, and the crosswinds were insane, 60, 80 miles an hour. It kept blowing tractor trailers over, and Harrison took the leg going down into Salt Lake City, and it was just Herculean. I mean, I think he averaged probably 102 for about 3 hours and just had the thing pegged as much as it would take at the altitude. And it was just amazing to see him and his Cannonball element just being able to really find that redemption for the 79 DNF. And it was really the year of redemption, to be honest, because we got to see the Omega finish, and Ben Preston won the C2C. Arnie got his cross-country record with a new New York to San Francisco record that year and won the event outright. Both of the broken down teams finished in their rental cars. And for Ficarra, it was a decade of planning an illegal outlaw cross-country race, and nobody got hurt and nobody died other than a deer. So as we came into San Francisco, Ficarra had the last leg, which couldn't have been any more fitting, and we got to the Coit Tower, which was this year's finishing line, in 38 hours and 19 minutes. And it was just so cool to look forward to that next night for the wrap-up party, not just of that run, but of the entire event. And the limo even ended up making it, and I posted it on Craigslist before we'd even departed. It took a little while longer to sell. I left it with Ficarra, and he ended up selling it for $3,500. So after $2,000 to buy it, another $3 or $4,000 into it, yeah, that was not too bad for a trip across the country. I still don't know what I'll do with the Audi, but we'll figure out something at some point, because as you'd imagine, even though this was the last 2904, the conversation at the finish line party was not exactly about not having plans to do this again.
Are you looking to buy your dream car? Premier Financial Services offers the flexibility of financing with the tax benefits of leasing. The PFS Simple Lease offers quick approvals and easy termination when you are ready for the next car. Visit our website and follow us for more.